Welcome to Touch Base Tuesdays, where we touch base on Tuesdays. 2 days ago, on January 15th, 2024, it marked 100 days since October 7th, 2023. I don't know what your newsfeed and timeline is like, but mine, which is, of course, uniquely curated based on the accounts I follow, was filled with posts naming that it had been 100 days. And that was consistent across the board for me, across accounts, whether it was an organization or a media outlet or an individual or group. And what was also consistent was an agreement that 100 days was far too long. What varied were the stories and feelings and words connected to the naming of 100 days. Some posts focused solely on the catastrophe that has been happening in Gaza, in Palestine, in the occupied West Bank. Others focus solely on the demand and need to return the remaining Israeli hostages. Some accounts focused on and named both of those things and the many other atrocities and horrors and griefs related to those things. And I couldn't help but notice that while the urgencies varied, while the stories varied, the consistent thing was that it had been 100 days and that was too long. I don't live in a naive fantasy world where I think that alone means it's possible for peace, or that alone can assure us or indicate that immediately tomorrow there can be a ceasefire and a return of the hostages all at once. And for the last several months, and for long before that as well, I've been looking at math and physics as a way to help sort out how to dismantle oppression and achieve and co-create and co-build liberation and equity and justice for all. I started thinking about that a lot when I was a junior in college. I have dry erase boards from May 2005 where I was literally using math to chart out these ideas and thinking about how binaries are themselves oppressive. And if on a political scale we've got the right and the left, ultimately they just cancel each other out. And I've been thinking the last many months that doesn't mean that like the middle or the center is what will ultimately save us, because I actually think the binary spectrum causes harm altogether, and that actually what may be our pathway towards liberation for all is on another axis entirely, in another dimension we have not yet even created or existed in. For so much of the last several thousand years, we have been operating on an axis rooted in systemic oppression, rooted in violence, rooted in harm. And so I'm curious about what the access and dimension looks like where we root ourselves in something else. And so what I found most curious about the consistency around 100 days and that being too long was that somewhere in some of that devastation and grief, somewhere in what I know must exist as, I don't know, solidarity and hope and love, I honestly feel like I want to stop and delete. Like, it feels too fucking Pollyanna to say all this, but I really do mean it. I really do wake up every day feeling it is possible for us to root ourselves in a world built in equity and love, but we are not yet there. And so I'm curious about what morsels we find that are consistent among us, that help us shift into that other access. And from there, in the long term, even though in the short term there are immediate actions that need to take place to stop this irreparable damage and pain, I do wonder how we get to that other access in place. Dibarti. Take care.